Right, hello there everybody, Adam Clery here for you today, and he's got the chunky knits on. Get that tree up. And of course, to kick off the festive footballing calendar, which is to say the time of the year when Sky artificially impose fake snow on everything, we had Crisis Club Manchester City versus Arne 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏𝗏. Have they played anyone yet? Liverpool 11. And while the result did go pretty much as everybody expected, if you're a Manchester City fan, it was very interesting because of how much better you looked in certain areas. And if you're a Liverpool fan, well, it was interesting at just how easy it was regardless. So yeah, let's talk about that. I do wonder if anyone at Swindon Town knows they're getting this much free advertising on YouTube. I suspect not. Right, yes. Anyway, these were the starting lineups for Liverpool. They had Diaz as sort of a central striker, like a false nine, like a quasi-Firmino sort of figure, which was interesting but wasn't particularly decisive. And for Manchester City, Ruben Diaz was back. Now, this might be a little bit dry, okay, but I'm going to start with some stats that will neatly inform the rest of the video, so just try and stay awake. This is the momentum graph for the entire game, which if you've not seen one before, I don't really like using them, but they basically measure sort of a combination of possession and chances and basically who is on the ascendancy and who is not. You can see Liverpool at the top here, Manchester City on the bottom. And what should be jumping out at you straight away is that Man City offered absolutely nothing in that first half. Now they did see, I'll show you now, in the first half, they had almost exactly the same possession as Liverpool. They were seeing a lot of the ball, but they were doing absolutely nothing of significance with it, so they don't really appear on that graph. But then we look at the numbers for the second half, and the pattern of the game completely changes. Pep makes a couple of really good substitutions. They start dominating the ball, and yet Liverpool have much higher XG. They have way more bigger chances. That was a measure of the control Arne 𝗘𝗫𝗏𝗏 had. Like, they were dominant in the first half, and then they were passive in the second half, but in a controlled way. But just hang on a second there, Adam. What do you mean by passive in a controlled way? That sounds like you just made it up on the spot. And yeah, I did. Sorry about that. But basically, think about those two Liverpool chances in the second half. The Salah breakaway and what they get the penalty from. Those both come from Man City having long spells of possession. So Liverpool were happy for them to have the ball because they were planning on springing up the other end as soon as they did. But what do those incredibly unexciting numbers and my drivel actually mean in the context of the game? Well, first off, that City looked to be on the mend. They were controlling parts of the game the way we expect them to, and they weren't getting carved open at will by Liverpool. And they did this in two different ways. First off, Ruben Diaz is back, who makes an absolutely enormous difference. I know everyone is focusing on Rodri and him not being there, but I personally think Diaz is as much, if not nearly quite the same, as Big Amiss. Like, if you just have a quick look at his FB stats from the last year, like, the guy is just enormous for this Manchester City team. He never makes any tackles whatsoever in the final third because he never has to. He's further forward winning the ball. He's almost impossible to dribble around. He carries it out when they're in possession. He makes that defence work for Man City. And just while we're sort of on the subject, speaking of Rodri.
And I remember that game in Tottenham Stadium was difficult. I never won.
I was going to say, which one?
Last year, the first time, but
yeah, we got that coming for you later this week, which is nice. But anyway, aside from that, the tactical change they had was getting back to the fabled 3-box-3 that they used to win like a million trophies that season. Manuel Akanji, and I'll just show you his heat map while we're at it, was stepping into the midfield alongside, of all players, Bernardo Silva. Now, it has been Gundogan at the base of sort of City's midfield for the last couple of games, but he was much further up with Phil Foden. And you can sort of see it on Man City's average position map. Like, it's messy and it's not exact, but the box is definitely there. Those four players were playing quite compactly in the centre of the midfield. This is it purely from the first half. You can sort of see it there again. And very neatly, because I know you all like footage so much, this is it just in the game. This is like Man City setting up from a free kick they had on the edge of their own box. That is the 3, that is the 4, and we've got Akanji with Silva, of all people, as the deepest midfielder. I'm all right. And that, by the way, is purely a mobility thing. Because Gundogan's actually better in the tackle, and he's better at winning the ball back, and he's better at interceptions. But if you watch the Man City-Tottenham game against a fast break or teams getting in behind him, he looked like he was running in a pair of jeans. Just constantly pointing at players that he was previously marking a few seconds ago as they swept in to score goals entirely unopposed. And Silva is not a more physical presence, and he's not better at winning the ball back, but he does cover the ground way easier than Gundogan does it. Like, this is him winning a tackle on the far left-hand side, and this is him winning a tackle on the far right-hand side. So he's not good at it, but he is at least more agile, more mobile. But I know what you're thinking, right? You're looking at this average positions map, and the first thing in your head is, what the is Rico Lewis doing? And the answer, just to be really blunt here, is practically nothing. Going to move this because it's taking up valuable pointing space. Man City had absolutely no width whatsoever down the entire right-hand side of the pitch. And I know you're quite an intelligent person. You watch stuff like this all the time. You think, well, was he not just coming inside to get near Haaland to give Walker the room to get up that side? And this is a still from this is the positions Kyle Walker likes to take up now. He does not stretch teams. He does not want to get to the byline. He does not give you width. He wanders into the centre. He makes it even more congested. Lewis's job should have been to do stuff out here, and yet, gee whiz. And Liverpool fans, we are going to talk about you in a second, I promise. But is it not just mad to look at this system that lives or dies by how much width these players can create? Like, it's why they bought Doku, it's why they bought Grealish, because the objective, give me 4 Liverpool players here, right, is if you've got a back 4, you have these two super wide to do one of two things. Either the fullbacks end up going out to them, which completely stretches this back 4, leaving room for the centre forward, and then loads of room especially for these two other players to get around. You've got a 3v2 in the most important area of the pitch. That's brilliant. Or, because they don't want that to happen, they sit really narrow, they leave loads of room for these two wide players, and they get to dribble at them. They get to attack them directly. They get space and time on the ball. Like, Bernardo Silva was very good at doing the stretching part. Jack Grealish was very good at doing the attacking part. That's how that system used to work. And now, what have they got in these positions? They've got young fullback who likes to invert into central midfield Rico Lewis, and box-to-box midfielder suffering a crisis of confidence, Matheus Nunes. That does not work. And I could make this a lot more complicated and start giving you loads of stats, but this is basically just the entire problem City had in this game. Like, they created a really nice sort of 5 players in this scenario and 4 players in this area, and they were actually keeping the ball well, hence their possession stats, and playing around Liverpool. But when they got into this area, this doesn't work. Like, no word of a lie, I swear this is true. I started shouting at the television in the pub when this happened, right? Just look at the lack of space Nunes is creating in this situation. Like, how crunched together and how sort of narrow the whole thing is. If you just imagine he was standing here, think about the knock-on impact that would have for the defender. And then I think this is Phil Foden. Like, he'd have room and he'd have room, and they just weren't playing it the way it's supposed to be played. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Guardiola's lost his mind. Like, you have Lewis there and you have Nunes there because you're trying to protect these areas a little bit better than they have been, and to an extent they did do that, but it also offered them absolutely nothing in an attacking sense. Like, this is Nunes' entire pass map from playing that position. Like, even when he does get slightly to the byline, the ball comes back, but so much of it is way further off the touchline than it needs to be. Like, I can't physically see it. I've just got to imagine it when I'm talking to you about it. But I'm pretty sure, if I remember when I looked at it, there's 2 successful forward passes in the final third. That's rubbish. But the same graph for Rico Lewis, oh my God. It isn't even that he's not good at playing that position, because Rico Lewis is a brilliant footballer. It's that he's just not playing that position like at all. Like, that is clearly instructional, by the way. Guardiola's obviously told him to sort of get into this area to help create more chances for Haaland, to evade his marker, stuff like that, and then allow Walker to try and provide the width. But just, he's bad at doing that, and they're way too congested in the middle. I see the thought process. Didn't work. And to be fair, Guardiola obviously didn't think it worked either, because about 10 minutes into the second half, he brought on 𝗬𝗏𝗘 and Doku, who can both stretch Liverpool, who would take a bit more risks, who would leave them a little bit exposed. But by that point in the game, Arne Slot had changed tactic. Right, now, Liverpool fans, thank you very much for sticking with us during all of that. If you've been watching the channel this season, you will know we have been battering this point into the ground, that in almost every single Liverpool game you watch, you see the hand of the manager on the pitch. Not in a Super Smash Brothers way, that would be terrifying, just in the system and what they're doing. What he has done, and the reason they are flying at the top of the Premier League and they are cruising at the top of the Champions League, is that week in, week out, as the pundits would say, he sets them up in such a way that their individual brilliance, their individual qualities, actually trumps the systems being used. But crucially, and I don't know why I'm being so intense about this, if he finds himself in a scenario where that is not true, where the systems are restricting the individual brilliance, he's just really good at changing it to flip that back round. But think about that in practice, right? Man City are now really passive in the press. They give teams way too much time and space when they're on the ball in certain areas. You saw it against Brighton, you saw it against Tottenham. And also, they're really vulnerable to balls down the sides and balls over the top. And you could not picture, you could not dream, you could not imagineer a better example of that than Liverpool's first goal. Now, I think part of the reason he wanted Rico Lewis to be drifting into the middle was that when they didn't have the ball, they could still have a full back four with Akanji sort of dropping back, and then still have four players in the centre here. But there was just no enthusiasm, no vigour, no aggression to their off-the-ball work. This is not a press. Or, to put that another way, right, these four lads here are offering zero protection to this team, whether it's from pressing the player on the ball and stopping them doing whatever they want, or sitting in front of the back line and giving them a bit of cover. They might as well not be there. And thus, if we look at Trent Alexander-Arnold's heat and pass map from that game, that is absolutely a human footballer trying to take advantage of that fact. Yes, he's very neat and tidy in deeper areas where they need to try and play through what little press Manchester City had, but when he could find whatever space he could, bam, zoom, straight to the moon. And this one here, all the way over on this side of the pitch, that is where the goal comes from. I wonder how close that is when I'm pointing, because again, I can't see it. I think it's there. If it's somewhere. You freeze this still and just look at this for an out of possession shape. All four of these players just really condensed right on top of each other, but nobody taking responsibility for the fact Alexander-Arnold has wandered across into this shape, and then the back four all just standing on the halfway line. And when you look at Liverpool's three attackers here, they're doing exactly what City's three attackers are supposed to be doing in this system, right? They have not stretched them out, so instead they have space. And you know, like, what the worst part about this goal is, right? Just look at the body language of these four. Like, they're not even pretending to try and press the ball there. Like, that's Trent Alexander-Arnold, like, one of the best technical players in the league, on his right foot in space. Somewhat, even if it's not the instruction, someone's got to throw themselves at that, and they just do nothing. And so inevitably the ball over the top punishes them, and it gets Mo Salah into this position. But even now, the defence have made their recovery runs. You'd actually say that this is them pretty well set. But oh no, would you believe it? They exploit Kyle Walker's Achilles heel. And no, that is not receiving a DM from a reality TV star. It is just a footballer making literally any run around him. And so, what is that goal? It is a lack of intensity, it is space in behind, it is space down the sides by the fullbacks, weaknesses correctly identified, and individuals using their enormous individual talent to go and exploit them. That is the Slot trademark, and you see it in every game. And even the penalty, like honestly, even the penalty is born out of a clever tweak that he made to how the team was playing. Like, this is Kelleher's pass map in the first half of this match. And isn't it nice? Isn't it cute? Isn't he just knocking it to his friends left and right? Doesn't he just think he's playing five-a-side with his buddies from work? They're going to be neat, they're going to be controlled, they're going to be tidy, they're going to play it around a bit before then trying to get in behind Man City. How nice. But this is his pass map in the second half. And frankly, how dare you, sir, a goalkeeper, think you can play football with all these grown-up adult men? You get that out of here if it ever comes to your feet. And then you look in the lead up to the penalty, Kelleher's actually the one with the ball. City are pressing as much as they have pressed in the entire game, and instead of knocking it here or knocking it there or trying to be clever with it, he goes really, really long. And he does that very, very deliberately, because if you look at the number of Liverpool players as he's got the ball, they are defending really deep, but they're still a few short. Like, it's not everybody back. And that was the change that Slot made in the second half, because he knew Man City were going to come onto them a bit more. So he had everybody sit nice and deep, but he did so while leaving the front three really far up the other end of the pitch, creating this enormous gap and effectively giving them all 1v1s against City's defenders after Akanji steps in. And it's not a precise way to play, it's not a genius way to play or anything like that. It's actually very low percentage and unlikely to really sort of yield anything. But on this one occasion, they can't deal with it. The three of them correctly and effectively scrap the ball off them, get through and win a penalty. And that, again, is a weakness correctly identified and exploited. And even in that half, you take it back slightly further, where does the Salah one-on-one that he should have scored come from? Like, clearly there was an instruction to be very passive in your own half and sit in sort of a low block, but when City's defenders had it, press the life out of them, try and nick it off them. And if we go back to those numbers from the second half, you can sort of see that's by design. Like, City had all of the ball and all of the possession, and Liverpool were being passive, but as soon as it was with any of their defenders, Liverpool were on them. Like, I am on 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏. Like, every single week, Slot finds a new way to impress you with this stuff. And to finish, right, can we just look at Liverpool's run of fixtures? Because I am old enough to remember when they hadn't played anybody and the real tests were to come. So shall we just quickly run over those? Chelsea, they won. Leipzig, they won. Arsenal away from home, they drew. Brighton, they beat twice. Leverkusen, they smashed. Villa, they beat. Southampton, they beat. Real Madrid, they mullered. And now, Manchester City, the arch nemesis, just swept aside without really breaking a sweat. And oh boy, you'd really hate to be their next opponents, wouldn't you? I'm reasonably sure it's definitely not the team I support. Well, nevertheless. Anyway, though, yeah, that's pretty much it. It wasn't really an overly complicated game. There was nothing too clever about it, but I do think individually, City looked a lot better, and I would imagine that corner is about to start to be turned. But Liverpool, you just see in this game why they're so well positioned to go and win everything. Because even when the system isn't overly clever, even when they're not dominating another team, they've got the tools and the weapons to A, not concede, and B, score goals. Like, I didn't even really have time to get into this here, but Van Dijk absolutely dominated 𝗬𝗓𝗏 one-on-one. Like, the individual quality throughout the squad is just mind-blowing. But yes, if you have enjoyed this video, and you bloody well better have, by the way, because I didn't spend 2 hours rebuilding the studio today for nothing, then you can let us know what you make of it in the comments below. Man City fan, Liverpool fan, what did you think? What are your prospects for the rest of the season? I would dearly like to hear it all, and you can get me across all the social medias, all of them, at Adam Clery, Clery. The FourFourTwo socials are in the corner of the video, and I think that's everything. We really do have a Rodri interview coming up this week. That wasn't just some AI thing I made. We went over and he was the nicest man in the world, and I think we're going to get out on Thursday, the same day the mag comes out. So look out for that, because it's so good. It's so good. I'm really proud of it. And that's it. That's all I've got to say. Adios.